The tragedy of Bobbi, Kristina Brown, and Whitney Houston finally came to an end today.
The 22-year-old was buried next to her mother at a cemetery in New Jersey. Entertainment Tonight's Kevin Frazier was there, longtime family friend, and he joins us now with what that was like.
I will tell you this, the ceremony was very brief, and it was under the tent to give the family privacy, but it was gut-wrenching. It was so tough on the family. They were inconsolable, and it was one of those moments that you don't wish on anybody. As you mentioned, Bobbi Kristina was laid to rest right next to her mother and also her grandfather. At the funeral home this morning, Dionne Warwick, Chrissy's Aunt Pat, and grandmother Sissy Houston. Sissy then, with her hands folded in prayer during the procession to the burial site. The actual burial was held under a tent so the family could have some privacy. Neither Bobbi Brown nor Tyler Perry attended the burial. Dionne Warwick laid a rose on Chrissy's casket. Meanwhile, Pat and Sissy Houston held each other, sobbed uncontrollably as they watched the casket lowered into the ground. Now, the one troublesome moment of the weekend was during Saturday's funeral in Georgia.
Justice for Bobbi Kristina.
Bobbi Brown's sister, Leola, suddenly going off the rails. As Pat Houston stood to speak, Leona stood up and began to yell at Pat, saying, "How dare you?" Tyler Perry, Bobbi Brown, and others quickly quieted Leona, and she was escorted out of the church by security.
Whitney will haunt Pat Houston from the grave. She will haunt her. Pat, it's not over. It has just begun. It has just begun.
The rest of the funeral was loving and respectful. Chrissy's father, Bobby, in the program declaring, just as Whitney once sang, "I also will always love you." R&B singer Monica could barely get through her performance. The similarities between the way Chrissy and Whitney died, found unconscious in a bathtub, were certainly eerie, also similar. Their burials, both transported in a gold hearse from the same funeral homes, buried side by side in New Jersey, both bodies flown into town on Tyler Perry's private jet. Tyler, in fact, thanked profusely on Chrissy's funeral program. Now, there's also breaking news, and it's disturbing. A photo of Bobbi Kristina was taken at her viewing on Friday. It has been sold to a tabloid. I talked to members of the Houston family. They're enraged. I mean, they're outraged by this. They cannot believe that this has happened.
Well, and I understand that photo came from a very private event. Do they have any idea who did this?
It was a very private event. Now, there were two separate viewings. There was one for the Houston family. There was one for the Brown family. I've talked to members from the Houston family. It was very controlled when they were there. There were no cameras. There were no cell phones because they didn't want that to get out. It was their last chance to really see Chrissy. And I just can't tell you enough. Whitney's funeral was star-studded. It was televised. This was a funeral and the burial of a 22-year-old girl who lost her life under tragic circumstances. As her casket went into the ground, it is something I will never forget. Listening to the wailing of Pat Houston and Sissy Houston. They are devastated. This whole family is devastated. I hope people think about that for a second before they get into all the tabloid.
And privacy is so hard to come by for this family. It's impossible. And when you heard her say, you know, this is not over, what does that mean, or where is that going?
I don't know what Leola Brown, her problem with Pat Houston is, but I will tell you this about Pat Houston. She was the first one to the hospital when Bobbi Kristina first fell into that coma. She beat the ambulance there, and she was with her and rearranged her schedule so that someone could be there 24 hours a day to bathe that child and take care of her. And that is why today she could barely walk. Because she was devastated, because that is someone she cared for and loved so much.
Completely understood. Kevin, thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Gut-wrenching stuff. And much more on Bobbi Kristina's burial, beginning at 7 tonight on The Insider. And then Kevin will have much more on Entertainment Tonight at 7:30. Both of those programs right here on CBS 2.